The alarm bells rang across the bridge of the U.S. Liberty as Admiral Kate Morrison watched the massive alien ship appear in space above Earth. The ship was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It was dark gray with sharp edges and glowing red lights along its sides. The alien vessel just sat there in orbit, like a giant metal beast waiting to strike. 3 days ago, the aliens had sent their message to Earth. They called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. Their message was short and clear. Surrender in 72 hours, or we will destroy your planet. They had sent the same message to every human colony in space. They wanted everyone to know what would happen if they said no to the Empire. Kate stood straight and looked at the alien ship through the bridge windows. She had been fighting in space for 20 years. She had seen battles across the galaxy. She had never backed down from a fight, and she was not going to start now. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were hard as steel. The other officers on the bridge watched her, waiting for orders. Lieutenant Commander John Taylor sat at the communication station. He was young, maybe 25, with brown hair and nervous hands. He had been listening to radio signals from Earth all morning. The planet below was not preparing to surrender. Instead, people were getting ready to fight. Factories were working day and night to build weapons. Military bases were calling up reserves. Children were being moved to underground shelters. "Admiral," John said, his voice shaking a little, "I'm getting reports from the surface. President Andrew Clark is about to make a speech to the world." Kate nodded. She knew Andrew Clark well. They had served together in the military years ago. He was a good man, tough and honest. If anyone could lead Earth through this crisis, it was him. She turned to the main screen as the president's face appeared. President Clark stood behind his desk in the White House. He looked tired but determined. His voice was calm and strong as he spoke to the billions of people watching around the world. "My fellow humans," he began. 3 days ago, an alien empire gave us a choice. They told us to surrender or die. They think we will be afraid. They think we will give up without a fight. They are wrong. Kate smiled as she listened. This was the Andrew Clark she remembered. Never give up, never give in. "We have faced enemies before," the president continued. "We have fought wars that seemed impossible to win. We have survived disasters that should have destroyed us. Each time we stood together. Each time we found a way to win. This time will be no different." On the alien ship above, Lord Vex Thalin watched the human broadcast with growing confusion. He was the commander of the Zephyrian fleet, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had conquered over 1,000 planets. The pattern was always the same. Send a threat, wait for surrender, then take control. It was simple, and it always worked, but these humans were different. Instead of fear, he saw defiance. Instead of preparations for surrender, he saw preparations for war. His sensors showed military activity across the entire planet. Ships were moving into defensive positions. Weapon systems were being activated. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. Back on the Liberty, Kate watched the president finish his speech. "We don't surrender," he said, looking directly into the camera. "We never have, and we never will." To any humans listening in the colonies, on the space stations, on the ships between the stars, hear this message. Earth calls for your aid. Come home. Help us show these aliens what happens when someone threatens humanity. The transmission ended, and the bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Commander Taylor's console started beeping rapidly. He looked at his screen, and his eyes went wide. "Admiral," he said, his voice full of excitement now instead of fear. "I'm getting responses from across human space. Ships are changing course toward Earth. Military vessels, cargo ships, colony transports, even mining platforms. They're all coming here. Kate felt a surge of pride. She had hoped some ships would respond to the call, but this was beyond her expectations. Humans from every corner of the galaxy were dropping what they were doing and racing toward Earth. Some would take days to arrive, others weeks, but they were coming. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had been patrolling the outer rim. She was a small woman with red hair and fierce green eyes. When she heard the president's speech, she didn't hesitate. She ordered her ship to turn around and head for Earth at maximum speed. "How long until we reach Earth?" she asked her navigation officer. 4 days at current speed, Captain," came the reply. "Push the engines harder," she ordered. 3 days. Her crew worked without complaint. They knew what was at stake. Earth was their home, even if they had never seen it. It was where humanity began, where their families came from. If Earth fell, the heart of human civilization would be gone. On a mining station in the asteroid belt, Commander Jake Sullivan got his pilots together. They were supposed to be flying cargo ships and mining equipment, but Jake had been a fighter pilot in the military before taking this job, so had most of his men. "Boys," he said, looking at the dozen pilots gathered around him, "we're going to war. Strip the mining equipment off the ships and mount every weapon we can find. We're heading to Earth." The miners worked for 18 hours straight, turning their industrial ships into makeshift warships. They bolted laser cutters and missile pods onto cargo haulers. They turned ore processors into troop transports. When they were done, the asteroid mining fleet looked like something from a scrapyard, but every ship could fight. Meanwhile, Lord Vexthalen was receiving reports from his intelligence officers that made no sense. Human ships were converging on Earth from every direction. Military vessels, yes, but also civilian craft that had been converted for combat. The number of ships heading toward Earth was growing by the hour. "This is impossible," he said to his second-in-command. "Our intelligence reports said humans had a small, scattered fleet. We counted maybe 50 military ships in their entire space force." "Sir," his intelligence officer replied, "we're now tracking over 200 ships heading toward Earth, with more appearing every hour." Vexthalen felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest. Doubt. The human response was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Most species either surrendered immediately or put up token resistance with whatever forces they had nearby. But these humans were calling in every ship they had, from every corner of their territory, back. On Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison was coordinating the defense with military leaders around the globe. General Mike Rodriguez was positioning ground-based defense weapons. Admiral Beth Collins was organizing the orbital platforms. Colonel Danny Martinez was preparing the Space Marines for boarding actions if needed. "How many ships do we expect?" General Rodriguez asked during their video conference. Kate looked at her latest reports. "Conservative estimate, 300. But ships are still changing course to join us. We might see twice that number." Beth Collins whistled softly. "The aliens brought one big ship and about 50 escorts. They're going to be outnumbered 10 to 1. "That's the idea," Kate replied. "They wanted to make an example of Earth. Instead, we're going to make an example of them." As the first day after the ultimatum ended, the alien ship Infinite Dominion hung in space above Earth, its weapons ready but unused. Lord Vexthalen had expected to find a planet preparing for surrender. Instead, he found a world preparing for the largest space battle in human history. The humans were not running away. They were coming home to fight. Commander Jake Sullivan gripped the controls of his modified mining ship as he flew through the growing crowd of human vessels around Earth. What he saw made his heart pound with excitement and pride. Ships were everywhere. Big ones, small ones. Military warships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, and even tiny personal craft. All of them had come to defend Earth. His mining crew had worked for 3 days straight, to turn their industrial ships into fighting machines. They had welded armor plates onto the hulls. They had mounted laser cutters and missile launchers wherever they could find space. The ships looked rough and ugly, but they were ready for battle. "Jake, look at that," said his wingman, Lieutenant Bobby Chun, pointing through the cockpit window. "I've never seen so many ships in one place." Jake looked where Bobby was pointing and saw a massive formation of warships emerging from hyperspace. These were not converted civilian vessels like his own. These were real military ships, built for war. The lead ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the alien vessel hanging above Earth. "That's the Terra Defense Fleet," Jake said, with wonder in his voice. "I thought they were just a rumor." The Terra Defense Fleet had been humanity's secret weapon for 20 years. While the regular Space Navy protected the colonies and trade routes, the Terra Defense Fleet had one job: protect Earth. They operated from hidden bases in the outer solar system. Their ships were bigger and more powerful than anything else humans had built. Most people didn't even know they existed. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty and watched the Terra Defense Fleet take position around Earth. 12 massive battleships, each one a fortress of steel and weapons. Leading them was the flagship U.S. Avalanche, commanded by Admiral Peter Brooks. Kate had served with Peter for 15 years. He was a good friend and a better commander. "Admiral Morrison," came Peter's voice over the communication system. "Good to see you again, Kate. Sorry we're late to the party." Kate smiled. "Better late than never, Peter. What's your status?" "All 12 ships ready for action. We've been waiting 20 years for a chance to show what we can do. Looks like we finally got our invitation." The Terra Defense Fleet ships were incredible to watch. Each battleship was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor. They moved through space like giant predators, graceful despite their size. The alien ship that had seemed so threatening before now looked small and fragile next. To the human war machines. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from the bridge of the U.S. Defiance as more ships continued to arrive. Colony ships from the Outer Rim had been converted into troop transports. Mining vessels from the asteroid belt carried improvised weapons. Even luxury passenger liners had been fitted with defensive systems and were carrying supplies for the fleet. "Captain," said her communications officer, "I'm getting a signal from the cargo ship Sweet Home. They're requesting permission to join the defense fleet." Lisa looked at her tactical display. The Sweet Home was a simple freight hauler, the kind that carried food and supplies between colonies. But someone had welded missile pods to its hull and painted Earth Defense Force on its side in big white letters. "Permission granted," Lisa said. "Give them a position with the other civilian volunteers." All around Earth, similar scenes were playing out. Humans from every walk of life were arriving to defend their homeworld. Scientists from research stations, miners from deep space, farmers from agricultural colonies, traders from the shipping lanes. All of them had dropped what they were doing and come to fight. Lord Vex Thalin stood in the command center of his dreadnought, staring at the sensor readings with growing alarm. When he had arrived 3 days ago, Earth had been defended by a handful of patrol ships and orbital platforms. Now there were over 400 human vessels surrounding his fleet, with more arriving every hour. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "the humans have us completely surrounded. They're maintaining a spherical formation with us at the center." "Vex." Thalin studied the display. The human ships were arranged in perfect order, despite coming from dozens of different locations. Military vessels formed the inner ring, their weapons trained on his fleet. Converted civilian ships made up the outer layers, providing support and backup. It was a textbook defensive formation, executed with precision. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Our intelligence said humans were disorganized. They fight among themselves. They can't work together." His intelligence officer checked his reports again. "Sir, it appears our information was wrong. These humans seem to be operating under a unified command structure. They're coordinating hundreds of ships as if they were a single unit." What Vex Thalin didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for this moment for generations. Not for an alien invasion specifically, but for any threat to Earth. The defense plans had been written and rewritten dozens of times. Every ship captain knew their role. Every commander understood the strategy. When the call came, they executed the plan perfectly. Colonel Steve Martinez sat in the briefing room of the stealth ship UE Shadow, looking at reconnaissance photos of the alien fleet. His Special Forces team had been gathering intelligence on the Zephyrian ships for 2 days. What they found was both encouraging and disturbing. "The alien ships are powerful," he told his team, "but they're designed for intimidation, not real combat. Their formations are sloppy. Their weapons are impressive, but not well coordinated. They've never had to fight a real battle." Sergeant Amy Parker, his second in command, looked at the photos. "What about their main ship, the big one?" "It's tough," Steve admitted. "Heavy armor, powerful weapons. But it's slow and not very maneuverable. Our fighters should be able to get around it easily." The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had done it through fear and intimidation, not through military skill. Most species surrendered when they saw the Empire's ships. Those that didn't were usually too weak to put up serious resistance. The Empire had never faced an enemy that could fight back effectively. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the heavy cruiser UE's Titan, one of the most powerful ships in the regular human fleet. He had fought pirates and rebels across the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this gathering of ships around Earth. Humans who had never met each other were working together like old friends. Ship captains were sharing supplies and coordinating attacks without being ordered to do so. "Sir," said his weapons officer, "we're receiving targeting data from the other ships. They want to coordinate our fire with the rest of the fleet." Danny looked at his tactical display. The human ships were linking their weapon systems together, creating a network that could focus tremendous firepower on any target. If the aliens attacked, they would face not just individual ships, but the combined strength of the entire fleet. "Link us in," he ordered. "Let's show these aliens what happens when you threaten Earth." Dr. Emma Foster worked frantically in the laboratory aboard the research ship UES Discovery. As the fleet's leading expert on alien technology, she was analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Zephyrian ships. What she found confirmed what the military commanders suspected. "Their technology is impressive, but not superior to ours," she reported to Admiral Morrison. "They have advantages in some areas, but we have advantages in others. The real difference is in tactics and coordination. They're used to fighting primitives. We're used to fighting each other." Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had developed tactics and strategies through centuries of conflict. The Zephyrian Empire had been fighting against opponents who couldn't fight back. Now they faced an enemy that knew how to war. As the second day after the ultimatum ended, the space around Earth had become a fortress. Human ships patrolled in organized formations. Fighter squadrons flew complex patterns that showcased their speed and skill. The message was clear. Earth was ready for battle. Lord Vex Thalin sent a message to the Empire's High Command, requesting immediate reinforcements. The reply came back quickly. "Withdraw immediately. Do not engage the humans until we understand their capabilities." But it was too late for a quiet withdrawal. The entire galaxy was watching. Other species had seen the human response and were asking questions. If the mighty Zephyrian Empire could be forced to retreat by a single human world, what did that say about the Empire's power? Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke. "Lord Thalin, you have 12 hours to withdraw your forces from this system. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. This is your only warning. The trap was set. The aliens had come to make an example of Earth. Instead, they had given humanity a chance to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Dr. Emma Foster sat in her laboratory aboard the research ship UES Discovery, studying the alien communications that her team had intercepted. She was a small woman with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. For 5 years, she had been studying the Zephyrian Empire from a distance. Now she was face to face with them, and what she learned was both fascinating and terrifying. The Zephyrians follow a very simple pattern, she explained to Admiral Morrison during their video call. They send one big ship and some escorts to a new world. They make threats. The local government surrenders. They take control. It works because most species are afraid to fight back. Admiral Morrison leaned forward in her chair. What makes them think it will work on us? Emma pulled up a data file on her screen. They've studied our history, but they only looked at the surface. They saw our wars and conflicts and decided we were violent and disorganized. They think we'll be too busy fighting each other to unite against them. They were wrong, Morrison said with a cold smile. Very wrong, Emma agreed. What they didn't understand is that humans fight each other because we know how to fight. We've spent thousands of years getting better at war. The Zephyrians have spent their time bullying species that can't defend themselves. Colonel Steve Martinez crouched in the cargo bay of his stealth ship UE Shadow, checking his equipment one final time. His Special Forces team had been given a crucial mission: get close to the alien ships and gather detailed intelligence. They needed to know exactly what they were facing. Remember, he told his 12-man team, we're not here to fight. We're here to look and learn. The aliens have sensors, but our stealth technology should keep us hidden. Stay quiet, stay invisible, and get the information we need. The team launched in small, nearly invisible reconnaissance pods. Each pod was barely big enough for one person, but they were equipped with the most advanced sensors humans had ever built. They drifted through space like ghosts, getting closer to the alien fleet than any human had been before. What Steve saw through his sensors shocked him. The Zephyrian ships were impressive to look at, but up close he could see their weaknesses. Their armor was thick but poorly distributed. Their weapons were powerful but slow to target. Most importantly, their formations were terrible. They're arranged for show, not for battle, he whispered into his communicator. They want to look scary, but they're not positioned to fight effectively. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Baker stood in the briefing room of the assault carrier UE's Wolverine, looking at the intelligence reports coming in from Steve's team. Ryan was a big man with a scarred face and gray hair. He had been a Marine for 25 years and had fought in every major conflict in human space. Look at this, he said to his officers, pointing at the tactical display. The aliens have 50 escort ships, but they're spread out around their big ship like a protective shell. If we can break through that shell, their main ship will be vulnerable. Major Chris Anderson, Ryan's second in command, studied the formation. What about their weapons? Powerful but slow, Ryan replied. Our fighters are faster and more maneuverable. We can get inside their defensive perimeter before they can react. The human military commanders were already planning their attack, even though they hoped it wouldn't be necessary. They had learned long ago that the best way to avoid a fight was to be completely ready for one. Captain Tracy Williams stood on the bridge of the carrier UE's Enterprise, watching her pilots prepare their fighters for launch. The Enterprise carried over 300 small combat ships, each one fast and deadly. Tracy was proud of her pilots. They were the best in human space, trained in combat techniques that had been developed over decades of warfare. Captain, said her flight commander, the pilots are asking for permission to begin patrol flights around the alien fleet. Tracy considered the request. Flying fighters close to the enemy ships would be seen as aggressive, but it would also demonstrate human capabilities. Approved, she said. Tell them to stay outside weapons range, but make sure the aliens get a good look at what we can do. Within minutes, human fighters were swarming around the Zephyrian fleet like angry wasps. They flew in complex formations that showed off their speed and agility. They performed maneuvers that would have been impossible for the larger alien ships. The message was clear. If this became a fight, the humans had advantages the aliens couldn't match. Lord Vex Thalen watched the human fighters with growing unease. His own ships carried some small craft, but nothing like what he was seeing. The human fighters moved like living things, darting and weaving through space with incredible grace. His heavy weapons would never be able to target them effectively. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "our sensors are detecting more human ships arriving. The count is now over 500 vessels." Vex Thalen felt a chill run through his four-armed body. 500 ships. His entire fleet numbered only 51 vessels, including his massive dreadnought. Even if every human ship was weak, the numbers alone would be overwhelming. "What is the status of our reinforcements?" he asked. His communications officer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the High Command has ordered us to withdraw. They don't want to risk a major battle until they understand human capabilities better." But Vex Thalen knew he couldn't simply leave. The entire galaxy was watching this confrontation. If the mighty Zephyrian Empire retreated without a fight, it would encourage rebellion on dozens of worlds. Other species would see that the Empire could be faced down, and the careful structure of fear that held the Empire together would collapse. Captain Jenny Clark piloted her bomber through the outer edge of the human fleet, marveling at the sight. Ships from every corner of human space had come together in perfect harmony. Military vessels worked alongside converted civilian ships. Professional soldiers coordinated with volunteer crews. It was like watching a symphony of destruction being prepared. "Jenny," came a voice over her radio. "This is Admiral Morrison. I want you to take your squadron on a demonstration flight. Show the aliens what our bombers can do." Jenny smiled inside her helmet. "Copy that, Admiral. Squadron, form. Up on me. We're going to give our guests a little show." The bomber squadron arranged itself in a diamond formation and flew toward an empty patch of space near the alien fleet. They carried antimatter torpedoes, weapons powerful enough to crack the hull of a battleship. They didn't fire at the aliens, but they made sure their weapons were visible on sensors. Dr. Emma Foster continued her analysis of alien communications, and what she discovered was disturbing. The Zephyrians were not just conquerors, they were slavers. Every species they defeated was forced to serve the Empire. Their technology, their resources, their people, everything became property of the Zephyrian state. "Admiral," she reported to Morrison, "if we lose this fight, it won't just mean the end of Earth. It will mean the end of human freedom everywhere. The Empire doesn't just want to control us, they want to own us." This information was quickly shared with every ship in the fleet. The human commanders had been prepared to fight for their homeworld. Now they understood they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. Commander Kyle Thompson sat in the control room of the experimental weapons platform UE's Hammer, running final checks on his ship's main gun. The Hammer was humanity's newest weapon, a ship built around a single massive particle cannon. It had never been tested in actual combat, but the power readings were impressive. "Sir," said his weapons officer, "the targeting computer is locked. Onto the alien dreadnought. One shot should penetrate their shields and cause significant damage." Kyle nodded but kept his finger away from the firing button. The Hammer was their secret weapon, something the aliens knew nothing about. When the time came to use it, it would be a complete surprise. Admiral Morrison received the 12-hour deadline she had given the aliens. Lord Vex Thalen's response was defiant but worried. He would not withdraw his fleet, but he also would not attack unless the humans fired first. He was clearly hoping for some kind of face-saving compromise. "That's not going to happen," Morrison said to her staff. "They came here to make us surrender. Instead, they're going to learn what happens when someone threatens humanity." The stage was set for the greatest space battle in human history. Two fleets faced each other across the void, each waiting for the other to make the first move. But only one side truly understood what they were fighting for. The 12-hour deadline passed without Lord Vex Thalin withdrawing his fleet. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's Liberty, watching the alien ships maintain their threatening position above Earth. The time for talking was over. Now humanity would show the galaxy what happened when someone threatened their home. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Lord Thalin has refused our offer to withdraw peacefully. We will now demonstrate why that was a mistake. Target the asteroid designated Alpha 7. All units prepare to fire on my command." Commander Kyle Thompson felt his heart racing as he powered up the main cannon of the UE's Hammer. The experimental weapons platform had been built in secret. Over the past 5 years, its particle beam cannon could punch through the armor of any known starship. Today would be its first real test. "Weapons fully charged, Admiral," Kyle reported. "Ready to fire." The target was a small asteroid floating in space about 50,000 kilometers from Earth. It was roughly the same size as the Zephian dreadnought, making it a perfect demonstration of what human weapons could do to enemy ships. "Fire, Admiral," Morrison commanded. The UES Hammer's main cannon erupted in a brilliant beam of concentrated energy. The particle beam crossed the distance to the asteroid in seconds, striking it dead center. The rock, which had been floating peacefully in space for millions of years, simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was nothing but glowing vapor expanding into the void. Lord Vex Thalin stared at his sensor readings in shock. The energy output from that single human weapon was beyond anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. His own dreadnought's shields might absorb such a blast, but they would be severely weakened. A second shot would likely penetrate and cause catastrophic damage. "Sir," his tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "that was just one ship. The humans have over 500 vessels in their fleet." But the demonstration was far from over. Captain Jenny Clark led her bomber squadron toward another asteroid, this one larger than the first. Her 12 ships carried antimatter torpedoes, each one capable of destroying a city. They had been designed to crack the armor of enemy battleships. But today they would show their power against solid rock. "Squadron, acquire your targets," Jenny ordered. "Multiple warheads, full spread. Let's light up the sky." The bombers released their weapons in a coordinated barrage. 48 antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the asteroid like falling stars. When they struck, the explosion was visible from Earth's surface. The asteroid broke apart in a chain of nuclear fire, its fragments scattered across thousands of kilometers of space. The alien crews watched in horror as the humans casually destroyed targets that would have required their most powerful weapons to damage. But the demonstration was still not finished. Admiral Peter Brooks commanded the Terra Defense Fleet from his flagship, the massive battleship UES Avalanche. His 12 ships represented the most advanced military technology humanity had ever produced. Each battleship was armed with weapons that could level continents. "All Terra defense vessels, target the asteroid field designated Beta Zone," he ordered. "Synchronized bombardment. Show them what a real fleet can do." The 12 battleships opened fire simultaneously. Heavy particle beams, plasma cannons, and kinetic projectiles filled space with deadly energy. The asteroid field, which contained over 100 large rocks, was completely obliterated in less than 30 seconds. Where there had been a collection of ancient stones, There was now only empty space and drifting dust. Dr. Emma Foster monitored Zephyrian communications from her position aboard the UES Discovery. The alien chatter was frantic and desperate. They were sending emergency messages to their home fleet, begging for reinforcements or permission to withdraw. The energy readings from the human weapons had exceeded their worst-case scenarios. "Admiral Morrison," she reported, "the aliens are in full panic mode. They're trying to calculate how many of their ships would survive a direct engagement with our fleet. What's their conclusion?" Morrison asked. Emma listened to more intercepted transmissions. "They estimate they would lose at least 80% of their force in the first exchange of fire. Maybe more if we use coordinated attacks." But the most impressive demonstration was yet to come. Captain Tracy Williams had been waiting for her moment to show what human fighters could do. Her carrier, the UES Enterprise, launched its full complement of 300 small combat craft. They swarmed through space like a cloud of metal locusts, each one fast and deadly. "All fighter squadrons form up on the target zone," Tracy ordered. "Execute attack pattern Delta 7. Show them what precision looks like." The fighters arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional formation around another large asteroid. Each pilot knew exactly where to position their ship and when to fire. It was a dance of destruction that had been practiced hundreds of times in simulations. "Execute," Tracy commanded. 300 fighters opened fire at the same instant. Laser beams, plasma bolts, and micro-missiles converged on the asteroid from every direction. The rock was carved into precise geometric shapes as the human pilots demonstrated their incredible accuracy. Finally, they fired a coordinated salvo that reduced the remaining fragments to dust. Lieutenant Commander Bobby Chen flew his modified mining ship through the aftermath of the fighter demonstration. His vessel looked crude compared to the military fighters, but it carried weapons that could crack open asteroids for mining. Today, those same tools would show the aliens that even human civilian ships were dangerous. "Mining Fleet Alpha, target the debris field from the last demonstration," he called to his squadron. "Industrial cutting beams, full power. Let's clean up this mess." The converted mining ships used their industrial lasers to vaporize the remaining asteroid fragments. The beams were designed to cut through solid rock, but they could just as easily slice through starship armor. The aliens watched as human civilian vessels casually destroyed debris that would have required military weapons to handle. Colonel Steve Martinez observed the demonstrations from his stealth ship, monitoring alien reactions. The Zephyrian fleet was in chaos. Their formation had broken down as individual ships tried to position themselves for retreat. Their communications were filled with panic and confusion. "Admiral Morrison," he reported, "the alien fleet is preparing to withdraw. They're powering up their engines and requesting hyperspace jump coordinates from their home base." "But Admiral..." Morrison was not finished with her demonstration. The final act would show the aliens exactly what they were facing if they chose to stay and fight. "All ships form attack formation," she ordered. "Surround the alien fleet. I want them to see what 500 human warships look like when they're ready for battle." The human fleet moved with mechanical precision. Military vessels formed the inner ring, their weapons trained on the alien ships. Converted civilian craft took supporting positions. The fighters swarmed in complex patterns that confused alien sensors. Within minutes, the Zephyrian fleet found itself trapped inside a sphere of human ships, each one capable of inflicting serious damage. Lord Vex Thalen realized he was facing a military disaster. His 50 ships were outnumbered 10-1 by an enemy that had just demonstrated superior firepower, better coordination, and more advanced technology. If this became a battle, his entire fleet would be destroyed. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the alien view screen. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were hard as steel. Lord Thalen, you have seen what our weapons can do. You are surrounded by over 500 ships, each one capable of destroying your vessels. You have one final chance to withdraw your fleet and leave our system. Choose wisely. The alien commander looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. The humans were not the primitive species their intelligence had described. They were warriors, and they were ready to fight. Prepare. For hyperspace jump, Vex Thalen ordered quietly. All ships withdraw from the system immediately. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered 1,000 worlds, was retreating from a single human planet. But as their ships prepared to flee, every species in the galaxy was watching and learning. The age of easy conquest was over. The Zephyrian fleet vanished into hyperspace like ghosts fleeing from the dawn. One moment, 51 alien warships surrounded Earth with their threats and demands. The next moment, they were gone, leaving behind only empty space and a small warning beacon that blinked red in the darkness. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's Liberty, watching the space where the alien dreadnought had been. She felt no satisfaction in the enemy's retreat. This was not a victory celebration. This was a message being sent to every corner of the galaxy. Earth was not defenseless, and humanity would not surrender. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander John Taylor from his communication station, "we're intercepting transmissions from the alien beacon. It's broadcasting a warning to all Zephyrian ships. They're marking our entire solar system as a no approach zone." Kate nodded. That was exactly what she had hoped for. The aliens would spread word of what they had seen here. Other species would hear about the human response. The galaxy would know that threatening Earth brought consequences, but the real impact of the confrontation was already spreading far beyond the solar system. Commander Sarah Davis sat in the communication center aboard the UES Herald, monitoring radio signals from across known space. What she heard amazed her. "Admiral Morrison," she reported over the secure channel, "we're picking up transmissions from dozens of alien civilizations. They all saw what happened here. The footage of our fleet surrounding the Zephyrian ships is being broadcast on every major communication network in the galaxy." Sarah listened to more signals coming in from distant worlds. "Admiral, 3 different species have already sent diplomatic messages to Earth. They want to discuss mutual defense agreements. They're asking if humanity would help protect them." From the Empire, Kate smiled at this news. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. They conquered worlds by making other species believe resistance was hopeless. But humanity had just proved that the Empire could be faced down, that their threats were not absolute. Dr. Emma Foster worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the UE's Discovery, analyzing the massive amount of data they had gathered during the confrontation. The aliens had revealed far more about themselves than they intended. Every scan, every communication, every reaction had been recorded and studied. "The Empire is not as strong as they pretend to be," she reported to the fleet commanders during their post-battle meeting. "Their ships are powerful, but they're designed for intimidation, not real warfare. Their crews have never fought an enemy that could fight back effectively." Emma pulled up technical diagrams on her screen. "More importantly, we now know their technology inside and out. Our weapons are equal to theirs in most areas and superior in others. If they ever come back in force, we'll be ready for them." But the Empire was dealing with problems much larger than one defeated fleet. Lord Vex Thalen's report to the High Command had created panic in the highest levels of Zephyrian government. For the first time in their history, they had encountered a species that not only refused to surrender, but had the military power to back up their refusal. On a dozen worlds across the Empire, subject species who had been forced into slavery were asking new questions. If humans could stand up to the Zephyrians, maybe others could too. Rebellion movements that had been crushed for decades were beginning to reorganize. The Empire's greatest weapon, fear, was losing its power. Captain Ben Wilson patrolled the outer edge of the solar system aboard his cruiser UES Guardian, watching for any sign of returning alien ships. His sensors detected only the normal traffic of human vessels going about their business. Trade ships carried goods between the colonies. Passenger liners brought families home to Earth. The mining fleets returned to their work in the asteroid belt, but Ben also noticed something new. Ships from other species were approaching the solar system, flying diplomatic flags and requesting permission to enter. Word was spreading that humanity was willing to stand up to the Empire, and other civilizations wanted to be part of that resistance. Guardian, this is Earth Control, came a transmission from the planet below. We have a Krillian diplomatic vessel requesting permission to approach Earth. They want to discuss an alliance against the Zephyrian Empire. Ben checked his identification records. The Krillians were a peaceful trading species that had been forced to pay tribute to the Empire for over 50 years. If they were willing to openly discuss resistance, the Empire's control was cracking faster than anyone had expected. Permission granted, Ben replied. Escort them to the diplomatic station. President Andrew Clark sat in the White House Situation Room, meeting with leaders from around the world and across human space. The confrontation with the aliens had lasted only a few days, but it had changed everything. Humanity was no longer a minor species hiding on the edges of galactic civilization. They were now a major power that other civilizations looked to for protection. Mr. President, said Secretary of Defense Maria Lopez, we've received formal requests for defensive alliances from 8 different species. They're all offering trade agreements, technology exchanges, and mutual assistance pacts. Andrew considered the implications. Humanity had always been focused on expanding their own territory and protecting their own people. Now they were being asked to take responsibility for the freedom of other species across the galaxy. What's the military's assessment? He asked. General Mike Rodriguez answered from his position at the table. We can do it, sir. Our fleet proved that we're more than capable of standing up to the Empire. With allies providing resources and support, we could protect a significant portion of the galaxy from Zephyrian expansion. Admiral Peter Brooks, who had commanded the Terra Defense Fleet during the confrontation, added his thoughts. The Empire's strength comes from fighting weak opponents one at a time. If we can unite multiple species under a common defense agreement, they won't be able to use their usual tactics. But the most significant changes were happening among the human fleet itself. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from her bridge as the massive armada that had gathered to defend Earth began to disperse back to their regular duties. But they were not the same ships and crews that had answered the call a week ago. Captain, said her communications officer, we're receiving messages from civilian vessels throughout the fleet. They want to know if they can keep their weapons and remain on call for future emergencies. Lisa was not surprised. The civilian captains and crews had tasted something during the confrontation that they had never experienced before. They had been part of something greater than themselves, part of a united human response to an external threat. Many of them didn't want to go back to their quiet civilian lives. Tell them we'll set up a reserve fleet program, Lisa decided. Civilian vessels can maintain military-grade weapons and training in exchange for agreeing to respond to future defense calls. Commander Jake Sullivan flew his converted mining ship back toward the asteroid belt, but his mind was still focused on what he had witnessed. 500 human ships working together as a single unit. Military vessels and civilian craft cooperating. Without friction. Professional soldiers and volunteer crews fighting side by side for a common cause. Hey Jake, called his wingman Bobby Chun over the radio. Think we'll ever see anything like that again? Jake looked back toward Earth, where the planet glowed blue and white in the distance. I hope not, he said. But if we do, At least now the galaxy knows what happens when you threaten humanity. The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than the fleeing Zephyrian ships. Species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly asking questions about this new power that had emerged in their region of space. Diplomats were making plans to visit the human homeworld. Military strategists were studying the footage of the human fleet's demonstration, but perhaps the most important result was the message it sent to oppressed peoples everywhere. The Zephyrian Empire was not invincible. Their threats could be resisted. Their demands could be refused. And there was now a species willing to help others stand up for their freedom. Admiral Morrison remained on duty aboard the UES Liberty for several more days, coordinating the return of the fleet and planning for the future. The victory over the Zephyrians was complete, but she knew it was only the beginning. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Earth was safe. The Empire had been humbled, and the galaxy would never be the same.